Yikes, yikes, yikes! Bloody interlacing! Oh dear, it looks awful! Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear! What I'm going to do about this? Well, this is not an easy thing to solve actually. This is a tricky situation. And I may actually need some advice from the viewer. Right then, this is going to be a little bit quick and impromptu and a little bit unstructured, I suppose. I actually filmed a little bit of the screen, but it turned out to be really crap, and the sound on the camera wasn't that great, and just the speech was a little bit slow, and I couldn't really tell what I wanted properly. But to make things short, I bought an Avermedia Game Capture HD2. The intention was to use it with a really cheap Scart to HDMI adapter, because I wanted a slightly better capture process, because currently I use a Pioneer DVD recorder, which works really nice. I quite like how it works. It works standalone. It works great with Scart and composite, especially with RGB. But the downside is that I have to burn it to a DVD. Once it's recorded onto its hard drive, I have to burn it onto a DVD, and that DVD always needs to get erased first, and then I have to burn it. And when it's burnt, I have to rip it on the computer and with handbrake, and then handbrake has to de-interlace it, and this is very time consuming and just a little bit cumbersome. So I thought, hey, I want to upgrade a little bit. I want something similar but a little faster, something that is as convenient as a DVD recorder but even more convenient, something that just uses USB sticks. So I bought the Avermedia Game Capture HD2. I think it's a nice device. It's very easy to use. It's standalone. It can capture a component in HDMI. The fact that it has HDMI is really nice, because this way I can also capture modern video sources such as a Raspberry Pi or any HDMI system that does not have HDCP. Unfortunately, the PlayStation 3 is not included in that list because it has HDCP on its HDMI, so I have to use component cables for that. That is not really a problem, but I mainly wanted to record retro games and retro footage. So, of course, Scart and component, they are kind of similar but not quite the same. And a problem with modern devices is that they don't really know how to handle 240 or 288p. They can't handle the low resolution progressive signal from a retro console. So this is where the DVD recorder still comes into play, because it has component outputs and a really good Scart input. The component output can simply go straight into the Avermedia's component input, and when you don't do anything special, the DVD recorder, the Pioneer recorder, will still output an interlaced format, which kinda sucks, because this way I still have to de-interlace it with handbrake, and that's just time consuming. But the old Pioneer recorder has a trick up its sleeve, and that is a progressive scan setting. In its menu there is a way to set it to progressive output, and this is really nice because what you're looking at now is recorded with this method. It is recorded using the Pioneer's progressive output routed through the Avermedia. It's not perfect, as you can see. It's still kind of jittering a little bit, and it's not a completely stable image. You can especially see this in the status display, but at least it saves me a lot of time. The only downside is I have to set this setting every time, because the recorder does not seem to remember the setting. for whatever reason. I think it's a security measure or a safety measure, because every TV could deal with interlaced, but not every TV could handle progressive scan. When you set it to progressive scan, you also get a warning saying that you have to be sure that your TV supports it. So this is probably the reason why it defaults to interlaced when it's turned on. But yeah, it works reasonably well with the Avermedia. And this way I don't have to buy an expensive Framemeister just yet. Initially I just wanted a cheap Scart to HDMI adapter, which I bought 2 weeks ago for about €50, and I thought that would be a nice stopgap solution, but unfortunately the bloody thing turns 4x3 into 16x9, and even worse, it has HDCP protection. The Avermedia displays the picture of that converter just fine, but when I try to record, it says can't do it. You're trying to record a HDCP protected signal. So it throws a spanner in the works, and yeah, I just didn't like that. And I don't want to shell out 300 or more euros for a Framemeister just yet. And I thought, maybe my DVD recorder can still come into play. I thought, hey, it has an HDMI output, maybe I could use that. But unfortunately, HDCP protected. But it has another nice trick up its sleeve, and that is the component output, and well, that's what I've used here. And I think it is quite reasonable. Anyway, it saves me some time compared to doing a software de-interlace. So yeah, this is a bit of a demonstration, and what you'll see next are just some sample clips that I recorded from various systems showing the method. Enjoy! Well, of course, a Framemeister or an open source scan converter would be a really nice solution. That would be the be-all and end-all solution in regards to video scaling and converting. I've heard a lot about these things, and they're really nice devices, but they're also quite expensive. The Framemeister is basically the go-to system. Everybody raves about it, but you have to get these things from Japan. There's only one place in Europe where you can get them, and that's the Solaris Japan website. But unfortunately they kind of have a waiting list for these things. They are on, well, pre-order, and they are often instantly sold out. You have to wait months before you can get them, because the demand for them is incredibly high. And well, the shipping times are also quite long, and the shipment fees are also quite high, even if they are shipped from Germany, from what I've heard. They also have the XRGB3, which is an older model, but that one seems to be a little bit finicky from what I've heard. It doesn't really seem to work well with certain TVs, which is a bit of a bummer. I'd quite fancy the open source scan converter if it only had a composite video input, because that would be kind of useful for capturing NES and Commodore 64 games, as I don't feel like RGB modding my NES. I'm just not really willing to do that, because it's a complicated mod, and you have to desolder the PPU chip and then install the mod board, and then you have to put the PPU chip on the mod board. I've heard it's rather complicated and not particularly easy or cheap to do. So I just want to stick with composite on the NES and use RGB for all my other systems. That open source scan converter looks pretty nice. Maybe my dad could make something similar. He's experimenting with FPGAs, but I think it's going to be really a difficult project to build something like that. I mean, the Scart switch is something that we could do because it was based on analog electronics, and well, FPGAs are quite something different. So I think eventually I will kind of end up buying a Framemeister if I can save the money for it, because I feel I only want to buy them if I have a real use for it. I don't use a LCD TV, but only a CRT, an old tube TV, which I'm quite happy with. I would only essentially buy it for the use of capturing, and currently the YouTube channel is not going that hot, so I don't really see much point in buying a Framemeister just yet, even though I would like to have one day, so I can make nicer captures. But hey, I think this is already quite an improvement compared to using, a cheap frame grabber, which can only do composite. At least with this method I can do RGB, but yeah, we kind of need to look into doing some nice 240, 288p to 480 and 576p, and maybe there's an analog way of up converting it. On the other hand, I think, bugger the Framemeister and other expensive fancy scalers, because why would I go into all that trouble, into all that effort? These things cost a lot of money, and they are just incredibly complicated. I think a DVD recorder works just fine. What you're seeing here is a direct interlaced capture that comes out of the DVD recorder and goes into the Avermedia. And for comparison, in just a few moments you see the exact same clip, but then recorded with the DVD recorder to a DVD which was ripped with handbrake using a software de-interlace. And actually I think the software de-interlace does a better job than the progressive scan output of the DVD recorder. So why would I bother outputting a progressive scan from the recorder if the software based de-interlacer does it better? Yeah, that's kind of a sober conclusion, but yeah, I think the handbrake does a really good job at de-interlacing, and that's exactly what you see now. What you see now on the screen is what handbrake produces out of that same interlaced signal. This is without any progressive scan mode on the DVD recorder. This is just the interlaced clip, but software de-interlaced with handbrake using the slow method, because I've noticed that the slow method produces better results than the bob method in some cases. It kind of depends on the input material, but I think this is quite serviceable. I mean, it may not be Framemeister quality, or because Framemeister kind of gives you that sharp emulator look, but why would I go into all that trouble? If I wanted to have super high quality, then I might as well just use a Raspberry Pi with an emulator. It may even be better than a Framemeister, because you're taking any analog equipment out of the loop, and the Framemeister can only be as good as the signal you put into it. It really depends on how good your RGB signal is. It's kind of similar to with audio files. You kind of get placebo quality to some extent, because as with analog to digital conversion, it means garbage in, garbage out. If you put a really shitty composite signal into the Framemeister, it can't do miracles, and even if your RGB signal has certain impurities, I'll bet it probably shows up. So yeah, why would I spend that money on such a fancy piece of equipment? If you really want that sharp emulator look, then well, a Raspberry Pi is just a much cheaper and more convenient solution. I don't really need a scaler because, well, as I've said earlier, I just use my old CRT TV and it works fine for me. You know, for capturing, this solution is good enough for now, and well, I might as well experiment a little bit with a Raspberry Pi to see how that looks, and well, just let me know what you prefer. Do you prefer a capture that was made from original hardware using a DVD recorder, or do you want a really sharp looking image that kind of looks like an emulator? Then I'll stick with using a Raspberry Pi. So that was it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Oh, but wait! Just before I forget, here's a little bit of a capture from a Raspberry Pi. This is captured on, well, regular settings, but nothing special. No filters, no scan lines, no nothing. This is just a pure HD capture done with RetroPie. It's the same game, Revolution X on the Mega Drive, and well, this is what you get when you just do a straight capture from the Raspberry Pi with the Avermedia. You see, the image looks very sharp, no scan lines, no jittering. A very clear and nice picture. It looks really good, except it's pretty pixelated. At least it's very sharp. It kind of lacks the softness of what you get from a DVD recorder, but I think it's kind of similar to what you could get from a scaler. Yeah, I just had to do this, even though the video is officially finished already, but just I had to do this, just for sake of comparison. And as a bonus gimmick. So this is the real ending. Thanks for watching.